I'm Rosalyn Zakheim, Rosalyn Zakheim.
And your first for our project is?
I am the first life member of Women Lawyers Association of Los Angeles.
How did that happen?
Well, I was involved in Women Lawyers in the 70s and 80s, and we decided to have a life member program. At that point, we decided it would help benefit the Oral History Project, which I was really interested in. And I had been president of Women Lawyers and was involved in California Women Lawyers when it instituted a life member program. And I joined as a life member anonymously because I didn't particularly care if I got any publicity or anything. That's what's so ironic about being here, I think. And because I was a state employee and not a very wealthy attorney, some friends in the organization said I should allow my name to be publicized because that would encourage people who were both members of firms, judges, that type of thing, who had much higher incomes than mine to also become life members.
And so when did you become a life member?
My guess would be it was in 1983 or 84. So that's when I was president, so it would have been around in that time period.
And when did you go to law school?
I went to law school from 1969 to 72 at the University of California at Berkeley, Bolt Hall.
And what do you do now?
I'm a research attorney at the Court of Appeal, downtown Los Angeles, and I do writing and research for a judge.
And what was your very first job out of law school?
My first job was working at the Appellate Department of the Los Angeles Superior Court, doing writing and research for a judge.
And what year was that?
1972. Right after I passed the bar exam, I got that job.
What was it like practicing law in Los Angeles in the 70s?
It was far different than it is today. Often, I was trying to recall, in light of this interview, what life was like then. And when I applied to law school in 1968, only 3% of the lawyers in the United States were women. 7% of the doctors were. So that will give you an idea what a male-dominated field this was. And when I first got out of law school and go to meetings at the County Bar Association, it was not at all uncommon to be the only woman in the room. And I was often asked to take minutes because I was the only woman in the room. There were far fewer judges who were women. There were far fewer anything that were women in the profession at that time. And we just didn't have a critical mass quite yet.
Did you have any difficulty in getting that first job out of law school?
Very much so. I had done well both in college. I'd gone to Smith College in Massachusetts and I graduated cum laude. I'd gone to Berkeley for law school and had done well there, and I couldn't get a job. I mean, I just couldn't get a job. And luckily, when I was at Bolt, they had an announcement on the bulletin board there for a job as research attorney, or I think they were called law clerks then, at the LA Superior Court. So I sent in the form application, and since I had no place to live without a job, I lived with my parents when I got out and took the bar exam. And the Superior Court called, and they said, would you like to come and interview? I went in and interviewed, and they hired me. So I didn't have trouble getting that particular job, but I did have trouble getting a job as a lawyer.
And was that after that job that you had trouble getting a job as a lawyer?
No, it was before that job. When I was in law school, I actually applied for some jobs where LA law firms told me, you're very well qualified, but we're sorry we don't hire women. They actually said that. I know it seems hard to believe today, but they did. In fact, one of them, I reported to the Bolt placement office, because that was virtually his words. You're very well qualified, but we don't hire women. And they hadn't. They had never had a woman as either an associate or a partner at that law firm. So I reported them to the Bolt placement office, and that firm had to come to Berkeley and justify its position. And the letter that they sent in justification of their position was probably more incriminating than anything I could have told them, and really got them into hot water. I have a copy of it somewhere, and it said things like, well, you know, partners in our firm, like other firms in Los Angeles, think that women will just get married and follow their husbands in their, and they put this in writing. That'll show you how well accepted that attitude was at the time. And I honestly believe that the poor man who told me this was trying to save my feelings. He wanted me to know that it wasn't me, you know, that I was well qualified. It was just that I happened to have this attribute that they couldn't tolerate. So they, you know, and this happened at 2 interviews. One was a little more subtle, but one of them was actually that precise.
And this is 1970?
Yeah, it would have been 1970, 71.
How did you decide you wanted to become a lawyer?
When I was in high school and college, I always wanted to be a teacher. That was what I was going to be. That's what most girls my age wanted to be, were either secretaries, teachers, nurses. Those were the professions that were open to us at the time. And when I was in college, I spent the summer after my junior year in Washington, D.C., with my college program, and worked for a congresswoman named Margaret Heckler, who was an attorney. And her head legislative assistant, more to the point, was also a woman attorney. This was something I had never thought of. I didn't know women attorneys. And I went back thinking, this is really what I love to do. And it wasn't litigating, it was the policy kinds of things that they did in their office. And I realized with a law degree, I could have so much more influence in political decision-making, policy decision-making. So I went back my senior year of college and applied to law school. It was not a lifelong dream at all.
Did you have any mentors in the practice of law?
Several women who I looked up to very much during the course of my career. Joan Dempsey Klein at the Court of Appeal is one of them. And she was the presiding justice later in one of the divisions I worked for. And I consider her very much of a role model. Also, many of my contemporaries were role models. People like Candy Cooper and Fran Candel, other women I knew my age and my years of practice who really did something with their lives. But yeah, it was a different era then. We didn't have as many role models. And Sunny Radin's sitting in the room back there. She and her involvement in women lawyers, the people who became judges in the Jerry Brown administration, were very influential to those of us in women lawyers at that time.
How did your mentors help you in the practice of law or being a lawyer?
I think mostly by being role models, by being there and making us realize you could become a Court of Appeal justice. This was not something that was closed to you. Justice Mildred Lilly, who I hope will be here tonight, is another one of them. My very second job as a lawyer was at the Court of Appeal. I've bounced back and forth in different jobs since then. But Justice Lilly at that point was the only woman justice on the Court of Appeal here in Los Angeles. And as it turned out, there weren't that many women research attorneys. There were some, but not that many. And so she tended to know who we were and was very supportive of us at the time. So I remember this would have been in 1974, 75, around in then.
So Judge Klein, Judge Lilly.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you incorporate family in your life?
I'm still trying to do that. I married somebody who I met in law school. So he knew from the get-go that I was going to be an attorney. And he teases me about it now. When we met, I guess I was probably about 23, and so was he. We're only 2 weeks apart. And I told him I never wanted to get married and I never wanted to have children, because I didn't think it was possible, really, to be a lawyer and to do those things in the early 70s. And as time went by and I saw friends get married and indeed have children, and they looked pretty happy, we ended up getting married. And we have a 15-year-old son now who is the light of both of our lives. I think the combination of family and profession is one of the hardest things, but also the most rewarding parts of my life. Kevin, my 15-year-old son, is just the joy to both my husband and me. I can't say enough about him. I was pregnant with him, 8 months pregnant with him when I was installed as president of Women Lawyers in 1983. And to show how naive I was, I thought, I'm a really organized person. Of course I can do this. And I did it, but a child, especially an infant, takes a lot out of you. And
so you were pregnant with Kevin when you were installed as the life member?
No, yeah, well, no, as president of Women Lawyers. I was president that year, and I had him right before a board meeting. I think I missed one board meeting when I had him, and then just kept coming to meetings. And
what year was that?
1983. He was born November 16th, 1983.
And you were president?
From 83 to 84. I know, a little, very naive, as I say.
No, how about parents, grandparents? Were any of those individuals inspirational to you in your career choice?
I think in my choice of becoming a self-supporting woman, they were. Both of my grandmothers were immigrants. My mother's mother immigrated from the island of Rhodes. She's a Sephardic Jew. And my other grandmother, my father's mother, immigrated from the Poland-Russia area. It's an Ashkenazic Jew, and they both, well, especially my father's mother, was very career-minded, even though she wasn't educated, she was smart. She ran a grocery store. She came to this country and worked in a garment factory in New York. She was supposed to be engaged to somebody, and when she met him, she didn't like him, so she didn't marry him. And I always thought that was a really wise decision. She ended up marrying my grandfather and being very happy. So in that way, they were independent women, and they were an influence to me. My dad, who just passed away last month, and I've been thinking about him a lot lately, was one of the more supportive people in my life. He didn't have a lot of money, but he put me through Smith with a scholarship, but he gave me everything he could to help me through that. And at the end of 4 years, he probably thought, at last she's going to earn her own living. And I said, Dad, I'd really like to go to law school. And instead of discouraging me, he said, that would be terrific. That would be just terrific. And he was always so proud that I had done that. And my mother was too, but she was a little, her reaction was first, you'll never get married. She doesn't recall that now because she's so proud of me having a career. But at the time, that was her reaction. Well, my dad was always, that's just terrific.
Do you think that there's anything I've forgotten to ask that would be significant to people watching this tape 10, 20 years from now?
I don't know. I think, well, I guess when Eileen was talking to me, she was saying, what do you remember about Women Lawyers Association in the 70s? And I was trying to, it was such a smaller organization, and we used to meet in people's homes instead of meeting at people's law offices. And so we got to know each other in a really collegial, friendly way where we knew people's families. You'd see people's children running up the stairs. In fact, the most famous child is David Schwimmer, who is Arlene Coleman Schwimmer's son on Friends. And when he was a little kid, probably no more than 10 years old, we used to see him running up the stairs when we'd have meetings at Arlene's house. I think the prominent issues that were facing us, policy issues at that time, were rape, abortion, and prostitution. And especially rape and prostitution seem a little odd now. Abortion is still, of course, a key issue. But those were the primary policy issues that we were working on, aside from issues that were important to women lawyers, getting more women on the bench. I can remember a meeting, and I think it was at Arlene's house, but I'm not sure about that, where somebody said, Governor Brown wants to appoint women to the bench. Let's think of who has been a lawyer for over 10 years. And there were not that many of us. There really weren't many who were lawyers at that point.
Governor Brown, what happened?
He wanted to appoint women. I mean, he was up for expanding the diversity of the judiciary and wanted lists of women who had been lawyers for 10 or more years. And there weren't that many, but we gave him the names we had and we backed them strenuously. But I can remember that. Now, of course, there are lots of us who've been lawyers 25 years and more, but then there weren't. It was really a different world.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. And time code, please.